On shelves across the world, this book sits in a strange limbo. To some, it's a collection of ancient folklore, grand tales of giants, floods, and parting seas. A storybook that belongs in the mythology section. But to others, it is the very breath of life, a manual so precise it can navigate a soul through the darkest storms of the 21st century. Today, we are asking the ultimate question for the modern seeker. Is the Bible just a beautifully written storybook, or is it a living life guide? If it's just stories, it's interesting. But if it's a guide, then ignoring it might be the greatest mistake of our lives. Welcome to the inside of the Bible, the storybook argument. We are looking at how many people in the world today view the Bible. To a lot of people, the Bible is just a collection of very old creative stories. They see it the same way they see a book of Greek myths or a classic novel like the Odyssey. The main idea is that the Bible is fictional or symbolic. Characters like Noah, David, or Jonah are just folk tales. They believe these stories were made up by people thousands of years ago to explain things they didn't understand before science existed. From this point of view, the Bible is treated as literature. It is praised for having great writing, intense drama, and interesting heroes. However, it is not seen as truth. Someone might say, I like the lesson about being kind, but I don't believe these things actually happen. They treat the Bible like a book of fables, similar to Aesop's fables, where the goal is to learn a moral lesson, but not to take the words literally. Another part of this argument is that the Bible is outdated. People suggest that because the stories happen in a world of deserts, swords, and ancient kings, they have nothing to do with our modern life of smartphones, careers, and mental health struggles. They see it as a history of stories, rather than a plan for today. The danger of the storybook argument is that it makes the Bible optional. If a book is just a story, you can read it when you are bored, but you don't have to obey it. You can pick the parts you like and throw away the parts that are difficult. It turns the creator of the universe into a character in a play rather than a guide for your soul. While the Bible contains stories, it is not just a storybook. The stories are the hooks that God uses to teach us about the spiritual battle we are in right now. The anatomy of a life guide. We have to look at what makes a book more than just something you read for fun. A life guide is a manual. Think of it like the instructions that come with a complex piece of machinery or a GPS system in a car. It isn't there to entertain you. It is there to keep you on the right path and stop you from breaking down. There are three main parts that make the Bible a perfect life guide. First, it is universal. A regular storybook is usually about one person in one specific place. But a life guide understands human nature everywhere. The Bible dissects the human mind. It tells you exactly why you feel anxious or why you feel a spiritual void. It is like a doctor who knows what is wrong with you before you even say a word. Second, it is timeless. Most advice books become outdated after a few years. But a true life guide provides laws that never change. Just like the law of gravity works whether you believe in it or not, the spiritual laws in the Bible, like you reap what you sow, work every single day. If the Bible says that pride leads to a fall, it doesn't matter if you are a king in the Old Testament or a CEO in 2026. The result is the same. It is a blueprint that shows the consequences of our actions. Third, it is practical and action-oriented. A storybook ends when you close the cover, but a life guide starts working when you put the book down. It gives you how-to instructions. For example, it doesn't just say, be peaceful. It tells you to pray about everything and think and act on things that are pure. It provides a step-by-step way to handle a spiritual battle. When you look at the anatomy of the Bible, you see it is built to be a foundation. It is the user manual for the human soul, designed by the one who created the soul in the first place. It is designed for us to live according to the insight of it. Cleaning the mind, the guide in action. We are moving away from theory and looking at how the Bible actually works as a tool in your daily life. If your mind is like a room, the guide is the cleaning equipment you use to remove the dust, trash, and clutter that build up from stress and the world around you. In basic terms, this is about mental hygiene. Just as you wash your body to stay healthy, you must wash your mind to stay peaceful. The world fills our heads with trash, negativity, fear, comparison on social media, and anger. This creates a spiritual battle because a dirty mind cannot hear the voice of God or feel true peace. The Bible acts as a guide in action through a process called the renewal of the mind. Instead of just telling you to stop being stressed, the guide gives you a specific replacement plan. It teaches you to catch a bad thought like, I am not good enough, and replace it with a true thought from the guide like, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. This is not just positive thinking. It is using spiritual truth to scrub away lies. Another way the guide works in action is by setting boundaries. Think of the Bible as a fence for your mind. It tells you what to let in and what to keep out. For example, it gives us a famous filter in the book of Philippians. It says that if a thought isn't true, pure, or lovely, we shouldn't let it take up space in our heads. This is the guide acting as a security guard for your mental sanctuary. Finally, the guide in action provides spiritual armor. In the Bible, there is a helmet of salvation. A helmet protects the head, the place where you think. When you use the Bible as a life guide, you are putting on a mental shield that protects you from the arrows of anxiety and depression. Cleaning the mind is not something that happens by accident. It is an active job. When you take the instructions from the Bible and apply them to your thoughts, you are taking the guide out of the storybook category and putting it to work to save your peace of mind. The proof is in the fruit. We are using a famous image from the Bible to explain how we know if a life guide actually works. In the natural world, you don't judge a tree by how pretty its leaves are or how tall it grows. You judge it by the fruit it produces. If a tree is supposed to be an apple tree, but it never grows apples, something is wrong. The same is true for the Bible. If the Bible were just a storybook, the only fruit it would produce is entertainment or a bit of history knowledge. But because it is a life guide, the fruit it produces is a transformed life. You can see the proof by looking at the results in people who actually follow the instructions. In the Bible, there is a list called the fruit of the Spirit. These are the results of a clean and guided mind: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. When you see someone who was once full of rage suddenly become peaceful, or someone who was trapped by addiction find the strength to walk free, you are seeing the fruit. This is the evidence that the guide is working. You can't get that kind of fruit from reading a fictional novel or a book of myths. Stories might make you feel good for an hour, but only a life guide can change your character from the inside out. Another way to see this proof is in the laboratory of life. When people apply biblical principles to their finances, they find freedom from debt. When they apply biblical principles to their marriages, they find healing and forgiveness. This is provable data. It shows that the instructions are not just suggestions. They are spiritual laws that produce consistent results. Finally, the fruit is the most powerful argument against skeptics. A person might argue with your logic or your history, but they cannot argue with your transformation. The Bible doesn't ask you to just believe it blindly. It invites you to taste and see. It challenges you to put the guide into action and see what kind of fruit grows in your own life. So, is it a storybook or a life guide? The truth is, it's both. It uses the world's greatest stories to deliver the world's only perfect guide. But a guide is useless if you never follow the directions. If you feel lost in the spiritual battle for your peace, stop reading the Bible for just information and start reading it for instruction or understanding. If this insight helped you see the Word in a new light, subscribe to the Insight of the Bible. Let's stop just reading the stories and start living the victory. I'm your host, and your journey into the light starts now.